and welcome back to Immigration Ain't Easy. My guest is Sahra Hirsi, who was originally from Somalia. And due to the collapse of the central government in 1991, she was displaced from Somalia and ended up in Kenya, and ultimately had to come to the United States as a refugee due to her displacement, and came here basically knowing nobody in the United States, and was able to turn that into something that's quite inspiring, in that she completed her master's degree at the University of Arizona. She founded her own company called Hirsi Enterprises, and created different agencies, such as the Amani International Preschool and Childcare, and other businesses that have helped other refugees in the community of Tucson, Arizona. And she is a wonderful example of, somebody who has basically lived this so-called American dream, but not initially out of choice. I mean, she was forced to flee and come to the United States, and ultimately, back in 2014, she was named the Woman of the Year by the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, in their 40 under 40 awards ceremony. And it was also along with the Arizona Daily Star and a couple of other large businesses that helped sponsor that event. But it's really, I mean, quite astounding when you see somebody who's come from a background like you've had, Sahra, and turned it into a success as a woman who is from a country that has had a lot of problems, obviously, like Somalia. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mo, for having me.
And let me just start off by asking you, what was the situation and what was life like for you when you were in Somalia? And how old were you when you had to leave and got displaced?
I was very young. I was born in Somalia. The war broke out, I think, when I was about 10, and we fled to Kenya. It was a long journey, and we, throughout the process, lost family members and loved ones. We stayed in Kenya for about close to 13, 14 years. I lived in the refugee camp Kenya, Dadaab, and also stayed in Nairobi. And we came to the United States
You came to the US in 2006?
2005 November. So November 11th of 2005. And I came with my mother, six siblings, and my nephew.
Wow. Tell me I mean, describe what it was like to be in a refugee camp, because I don't think a lot of people truly understand, the difficulties of being in a refugee camp, and what it's like to live in one.
It's very difficult. It's not safe. There's no healthcare system. Very sometimes it can be very violent. There were a lot of rape and robbery and many things going on. There were outbreaks, and it's not something very easy to describe.
Hmm. When you say outbreaks, you mean like health
Health,
related?
hmm cholera.
Oh, cholera and other
Mhm.
types of disease.
Yes.
Um, Do you feel like you were fortunate to survive the refugee camp
I
because of that?
was, I was definitely, I was. We were tortured many times when we lived in the refugee camp. We're very, very fortunate. We're the few that made it through to come to this country.
Were you targeted because of your religion, or what was like when you say that you were tortured? Like, was it just because you were different? Was it because of religion or race, or just you don't know why?
There, because of what happened back in Somalia when we came to the camp, the violence continued, and there was still minorities targeted, different groups targeted, and that affected my family.
And when you left Somalia, were you with your mother and your six siblings and any other family, or was it just primarily your mother and your siblings?
No, we were more than that. Our father was with us, but we were separated. And also, when we came to the camp, we were separated again. And my father had to leave because of all these things that happened in the refugee camp. But when we came here, it was just my mother, six of my siblings, and my nephew.
Were you ever able to reunite with your father?
I have seen again my father last year after maybe close to 20 years.
Wow. And so let me ask you, as far as taking the journey to the United States, before you were, I guess, taken over by, was there like a sponsoring organization? Was it the United Nations? Who took custody of bringing you to the U.S.?
So refugees go through a lot of process and background check. And as I mentioned earlier, no one just decides to become a refugee. Refugee is someone who lost their home, their loved ones, their country, everything they have known. When they come here, they arrive with nothing and they have to rebuild their lives from scratch. And many times there is misconception that refugees are burden, but they are not really. They contribute to the economies and cultures, and history shows otherwise. But going back to my story, we were registered through the United Nations. We went through a background check, intensive background check. We were there about maybe 14 years before we came here. And our case was given to the United States state like resettlement. I think we went through protection interviews, so it was very intense process.
Yeah, I looked at because when you do immigration law like I do, a lot of times we don't work with refugees, we work with asylees. And
Hmm.
just so that whoever is listening to this understands, a refugee is somebody who is seeking, or their organization is seeking to resettle them in the United States. And they have to do this very arduous, intensive process from the outside while you're living in a refugee camp. An asylee, on the other hand, will come to the United States and ask for asylum either at a port of entry or inside the United States. And they have to undergo the process from inside the US versus outside. Um, I remember, so as a lawyer, I've read about it, but I haven't actually worked on one of these processes before because it's usually done through the United Nations. And so my question for you is, you talk about the process. Do you begin this 14-year process from the moment you get to the refugee camp, as far as whatever paperwork or interviews and everything else and background checks? Or is that something that happens later? Or is this really like a process that takes almost 14 years or took almost 14 years?
I think there are people that it took longer than that. I met individuals here in Tucson that lived in refugee camps in Tanzania or different countries close to 30 years. Some of them were born in the refugee camp. So the process is very intense. Every step includes additional checks and additional verification. And it starts by the time you arrive at the border of that country.
Of the other country.
Oh, yeah, the refugee camp is.
So when you got to Kenya, you arrived, you had nothing, like all of your belongings besides maybe some clothes. Is that all you had?
Nothing, yeah, nothing.
Wow.
The register with the United Nations, get a ration card. It's this little cards that you get some food and tent.
So do you live, and that was what I was going to ask, do you live in a tent all this time? Like you don't live in an actual like building or structure?
No, it's a tent, and there are different blocks designated. Each block has a name like D or C block, and thousands of families live each block.
And it's all fenced in. You can't leave, or are you allowed to leave on like special occasions at all, or no?
No, you can't. You can leave, but again, you can then end up in like you can be arrested by the government or of that country. You don't have the legal paperwork to travel to anywhere. If you have, I was fortunate enough to get a document from the United Nations to go to Nairobi due to security reasons, but that is a very few exceptional cases. It's not something that happens a lot. And even once you get that, it's very hard to survive in big cities where you don't have the opportunity to work, you can't earn income, you don't have the legal paperwork. So it is really a challenge throughout.
Now, when you got to the refugee camp, did you speak Somali and Arabic, or what was your primary language?
My primary language was Somali, and because I grew up in Kenya, and especially because I stayed in Nairobi, my second language became Swahili.
Oh, and so how did you learn English? Like, did you know English or study English while you were in the camp?
I did go to and took some classes, and when I came to Nairobi too, I continued. Was fortunate enough to have access to that.
So, when you arrived in the United States, did you originally get resettled in Tucson, or where were you originally resettled?
In Tucson. Tucson was my first city of the U.S., and I was very glad and
Were
adjusted.
you were you resettled here with your siblings and your mother?
Yes.
Now tell me, what was your, like, if you can recall, your first impression of when you arrived in Tucson, Arizona?
A little bit scared. We came to the airport at I think around 11 p.m. It was a long flight. We first went to London, then from London to Los Angeles, from Los Angeles to Tucson. And we didn't know where we were going. We were getting information from the immigration each time we're carrying these little bags that say IOM, International Organization of Immigration. And we met, I think, a case manager and someone from Catholic Community Social Services at the airport. We were taken to our new apartment. And I remember next morning we came outside looking around to see if there was anything we could recognize. and but
Was
because I
it a culture shock for you to like to step outside and see what Tucson looked like compared to where you had been?
so I was in Nairobi. Nairobi is a big city, but still it was a little, strange, and not like now in any neighbors or anyone you can name. We came from the oral community where people are always talking to each other and knowing each other. But I think next day the case manager visited us again, and I spoke some English, so I was lucky enough to get a job and integrate
Where
easily.
did you get your first job when you got here?
And a company it was a warehouse called Rainbird. I think it was.
Oh, the sprinkler system.
Yes. And after that, I worked in a hospital. I worked again another hospital. And
Did you feel like, I mean, it's hard for me to envision what it's like, but did you feel for the first time in your life that you were free in a sense once you got to the United States and were able to step outside and not feel like you were, say, imprisoned?
I did, because being a refugee and being in a refugee camp means, I mean, to me, it's been like a cell, but not even. When you are in a cell, maybe when you one day will get out.
We'll get out, yeah.
You have communications,
Mhm.
not knowing that, not knowing where your future will go. So we were very happy and very fortunate to be here and to easily travel. The things that we take granted, like the little things of like going to another city without thinking, oh, I can't travel. The things that come when you come here.
Let me ask about the the help that you received from the community and the organization. Which organization, refugee organization, assisted you when you first arrived and provided you with a caseworker?
Catholic Community Social Services, but there were other individuals from the community that I am very grateful for. And these are people that work with the refugees tireless. One of them is Ishkashitaa, Barbara Eiswerth. Another individual was Bam Fine. She was with Tucson Unified School District. There were many, many people, and they helped me to look for work and helped us to enroll my siblings to school.
And you haven't forgotten where you came from, which is so important. I mean, you continue to help other refugees and people in that same sort of situation.
I did. I am who I am today because of the help and the mentorship and everything I got from the community.
Mhm.
And I wanted to give it back, give back to the community. Refugees they go through many challenges, including displacement, legal barriers, language barriers, finding employment. And when they arrive with nothing, start their life is from scratch. And as you know, many times people, like, they're interpreted as a burden, but they are not really. Reality, history shows that they contribute greatly to the economies and cultures. And once given an opportunity, they thrive and exceed.
Let me ask you, what was the most difficult thing for you to adapt to in the United States? Or what, I mean, to me, it seems like a lot of these situations aren't perfect. There are struggles. What was for you one of the hardest things to adapt to or struggle with when you came to the US?
I think now in the right information, the misconception, explaining to people all like again and again, yes, I can, do this. And I remember when I first started my businesses, I had to compete and explain to people, yes, I can be other businesses in Bima County. And one of my mentors, who really helped me a lot, and I can never forget, was the late Richard Elias. He was the Bima County supervisor.
How did Mr. Elias help you? I mean, what was his role in that?
I met, there was an advisory council that we were both members to help the community. He was very unusual, like he will really go to the refugee apartments and sit down with them, like without looking for election or anything, just to help them because they couldn't even afford refugees. And I don't know if you remember, 2010, there was a rollover, a vehicle that was carrying close to 20 refugees looking for employment. And when that happened, 6 or 7 of them died in that car accident. So it was Richard Elias's office and him that helped us with facilitating all of that because the accident happened outside Bima County. It happened Wilcox, I think, and to facilitate all of that. So when I was starting my businesses, we were running into issues of not being like getting accepted, and he would advocate for me and he would help me.
You started so to pivot to that topic. So you did you start? Where did you get the idea to become an entrepreneur and start your own business? Like, what year was that, and what was the process of doing it?
So my father was entrepreneur. Um, Even when I stayed in Nairobi, I used to do a bakery and sell like little things, even though I could not work. But when I came here, one of my first jobs was to work with the families and students at Amphi. Then later, I also worked with Tucson Unified School District as a family and student mentor. And my job description was to focus on academic. But I couldn't focus on that because there were many other needs. For example, my students will come to school and tell me, okay, our electricity is going to shut down. We don't have water at the house. And we would get a lot of evictions. I remember one time we had close to 10 eviction notices that was going to affect our students at Tucson Unified School District. And many times people will tell me we have to move out of Tucson, even if their children had admission to go to college here, because they would say employment is hard here, language. It's harder a little bit here in Arizona, so we're going to other states. And they will tell me we don't have access to childcare, we don't have access to language like the other states, the employment. So our home health care was founded to empower and make refugee women who could not compete in the workforce because of either language barrier or cultural barrier. So I put together a curriculum, a training that can be different languages. And once they got that opportunity, really they exceeded. They're great caregivers. So those were the reasons behind finding these companies.
So you like were you working on this while you were also focusing on your education at the university?
Yes, I did. And I was also full time when I was studying this with Tucson Unify, and used to also do some part-time classes with La Frontera. But I graduated from Eller School of Management in 2015 with EMBA, Executive Business Administration. And luckily, the companies, one of them is really big company. Today, it hires close to 150 employees.
Is that the home care services or
Yes,
which
it's
one?
the home
Okay.
health.
Is that just is that the Arizona Tender Hands?
Yes, it's Arizona Tender Hands Home Care Services. Our office is located on Broadway and Swan. Um, it is one of the only community. It is also a community center. It's open all 7 days a week. People can come anytime they want with for different reasons. It's not only to become a caregiver, but we also add other services.
So you created this company, and now because of your uh, entrepreneurship, you have helped to create over 100 jobs, 150 jobs, correct?
Yes, and not everyone that works for this company is refugee, no, or immigrant. It helps the entire community of
Even
Tucson.
U.S. citizens?
Yes, even U.S. citizens. It's very well known company here in Tucson. Our programs are actually statewide, and we serve many Tucsonians.
Mhm. And you also created some other businesses. What other businesses have you been involved with?
Arizona Language and Transportation. It was a language and interpretation area, and it is a company, and that was also to answer the need for interpretations, because I remember when I worked for the school district, many times students will miss their classes and tell us, okay, I was interpreting for my mother, or family member had a doctor's appointment. So that was also founded to answer the needs.
And so I mentioned earlier that in 2014 you were honored by the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and other organizations as the Woman of the Year. Um, what was that like for you to be able to go up on stage and receive that award coming from where you originally started?
I was very humble and honored that the Arizona community nominated me, and there are many people that I know deserve that. But I work very hard, and I
Did they
don't
put your picture up on a billboard?
I don't remember the billboard, but I remember I was on the websites and all of that. So when I came here the end of 2005. 2007, I got an award from uh, YWCA, and I was among the women on the move. 2010, I got Ben's Bell Award. I think you are familiar with that. And I got a recognition or a special letter from Congresswoman Gabriel Giffords' office. And 2014, I was the Woman of the Year and 40 under 40. 2015, yeah, 2015, I was two women who did. It's from Tucson chapter links. So I did get a couple awards
And
throughout
you're a
the.
very humble individual. I mean, it seems like receiving awards or accolades for what you've done is something that you appreciate, but you understand that you are just doing, something that you're passionate about?
And I owe to the community, as I said at the beginning, I am who I am because of the help I received and the people who mentored me and the people who supported me. I came here as a refugee with nothing, and today I am very successful. Um,
Let me ask you about one of those individuals who has been I think, major support for not only you, but for a lot of refugees, and that's Barbara Eiswerth. Um, how would you describe Barbara to the listener?
I call Barbara Eiswerth the firefighter of the community. She's the first one or one of the people you will call with for any situations. And if you are in crisis, if you have questions about immigration, if someone was arrested, if someone needs a job. So, and she's always making time for the community.
And her organization is Ishkashitaa.
Ishkashitaa, yes.
And when you see refugees today versus almost 20 years ago when you arrived here, I mean, do you just see the same common types of stories and people coming for the same reasons?
Yes, conflict is especially in the Horn of Africa. It increased, if anything. I don't see any changes with that, and the challenges here might be more now than when I came. The economic, the financial issues, rent, everything is more expensive right now. So it
Yeah.
is really.
I think it is a very challenging time. I mean, I've noticed, like, I think, and maybe this is something that might be different, is um, trying to find places for people to live. Housing is a struggle, but also when people arrive here, you know, the amount of red tape that they have to go through just to get certain, basic documentation often is difficult.
Yes, and getting the right information, the right resources. Um, One of the biggest challenges they face applying or getting employment is having work history, which is impossible because even
You're
if
just starting.
yeah, you're just starting. So giving them an opportunity is way to start, and even if they have to volunteer, that's when I think Iskashita comes in. They go, they learn some skills, they get something they can put in their application to start.
What year did you become a U.S. citizen?
2011, after 5 years.
And describe what it was like the day that you were administered the oath of allegiance, and what was that like for you? What sort of emotions did you feel?
I felt that I belonged to a country, at least. Being a refugee means you are stateless. Even though I was born in Somalia, living in a refugee camp, you don't have an state. You are stateless. And to become a U.S. citizen was a dream come true. I had at least can say I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a Somali American. It's very important, and it
Yeah.
was very emotional.
Was when you did your ceremony, was it in the district court, in the courthouse?
Yes, it was. I was with my attorney, Chin Clisby, who you might have known her.
Yep. Yep. And you said Jean, right?
Yeah, Chin
Jean
Clisby.
Cleepsey. Yeah, she was an amazing lawyer. I think she might have moved to the Bay
California.
Area,
Yeah, yes.
because I think she reached out a few years ago, and I just remember she would help a lot of the refugee community, especially around the time that you arrived here.
She helped us. Yeah, she was a great attorney, worked tireless, like the Goldmans, like you and Gloria.
Well, let me ask you then, what what do you think right now is the future of your own like businesses? Do you think that I would imagine the demand is very high for home care, especially with the aging baby boomer population, right?
Yes, our business has a lot of potentials, and I think we will thrive and do well. We will continue supporting the community, not only refugees, but anyone here in that we can.
And you're also a mother of young children, which I think you have to juggle a lot of different things, right?
Yes, I have three young children. Two of them go to basis, which is academically very challenging school, but good school. So I
And so, if someone was to ask you, what does the United States mean to you? Like, describe in maybe a couple of sentences what the United States means to you, what it has done for you. What would you say to that?
everything. United States is a place where you can achieve your goals if you really work hard. It is possible. It's called the land of opportunity. As I said, the basic things that humans take for granted, refugees, as a refugee, we didn't have that, like running water, electricity, safety. One of the things I'm grateful is that I don't hear gun sounds here. That if I walk on the street, I feel safe enough not to worry about if I will be asked, who are you, and to be tortured. It's a place where you can educate and go to school. And I understand right now things are hard here, but there are places. It still refugee camp is harder, and I think everyone will want it to come here. And many times people, question why refugees want to come here if it's this hard. At least they are safe here, and at least we can dream here.
And let me ask you, is your mother still alive?
Yes,
And is she still here in Tucson, Arizona?
yes, my mother is still here.
And that's so important too, that your whole family, uh, at least your siblings and your mother, were able to be together,
Mhm.
and be able to lean on one another.
And not to be separated. Yes, that's true.
So yeah, I think that you are just a beautiful example of what makes immigration so great, in that you can be in a terrible situation and have the drive to want to better your own life, to better the life of others, to create jobs, and in the process, just bring security to a lot of people just by doing what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, many people of refugee backgrounds had contributed to the economies to their host countries through entrepreneurship, employment, tax revenues, all of this. I was looking one number, and in the United States in 2019, approximately 188 refugees were entrepreneurs, accounting for like 13% of refugees in the US workforce. These businesses generated 5.1 billion income. So
So when people say that immigrants are coming here and taking advantage of the system and not benefiting the United States economically, what you're saying, especially from refugees, is totally untrue.
yes, I just wanted to emphasize that refugees are not just survivors, they are innovators, entrepreneurs, they contribute to the society, they bring resilience, talent, diversity, they strengthen the communities they become part of. And when we create opportunities for them, we're not just helping individuals, we're building a stronger economic and society. So,
Well, hopefully, I mean, your story and what you have provided is so important, because when we look at the Statue of Liberty, the symbol of the United States allowing refugees and those people who are fleeing a terrible situation, we need to look at situations and stories like yours. So thank you for being willing to share that story with myself and others.
thank you so much. I wanted to sincerely thank you and the work you and your family do in this community. And
We're all in it together, aren't we?
it makes a
In
difference.
different ways. And that's, I think, important too, is that people need to know that there are people like Barbara and organizations out there who are able to and willing to help them, and it seems like without that support system, it would have been probably much more difficult for you to get moving and started in the United States.
It would have, yes, I agree with you. And thank you so much.
So, Sahra Hirsi, you are an inspiration, uh, a mother, an entrepreneur, a survivor, somebody who we should all just appreciate, especially for what you've done for the community that both you and I reside in Tucson, Arizona. And so thank you for joining me on this Immigration Ain't Easy podcast.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you. I appreciate it and look forward for doing more on this program.
Exactly. And thank you to my daughter, Emma Goldman, who is the producer of the show. And you can find this podcast on the website, immigrationainteasy.com, and also on Apple and on Spotify and other podcasting apps. And I just am, heartened to speak to immigrants like yourself and share your stories of success. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Ma. And thanks to Emma.